All right. Welcome to the Redevelopment Commission meeting on January 23rd, 2023. First item of business is roll call. Deb Hutton here. Kevin Myerson here.
Sarah Bowerly Jansen here.
Randy Cassidy here.
And Cindy Canardi here. Staff present.
John Zogan, the department.
Christina Finley, Head Department.
Barry Allen, legal.
Alex Crowley, Economic and Sustainable Development.
Very calm.
And Logan Royhan. Next item of business is Redevelopment. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Myers. This from January 3rd, 2023.
Sarah Bowerly Jansen on second.
We have a first and a second. I need a roll call vote, please. Yes.
Sarah Bowerly Jansen, yes.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
And Cindy Canardi, yes. Next item of business is examination of claims for January 20th, 2023 for $237,458.88. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Randy Cassidy, I'll make a motion to approve the claims as noted.
Second. We have a first and a second. I need a vote via roll call, please. Deb Hutton, yes.
Sarah Bowerly Jansen, yes.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
And Cindy Canardi, yes. Next item of business is examination of payroll registers for January 13th, 2023 for $45,506.38. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Deb Hutton, I make a motion to approve the payroll claims as stated. Kevin Myerson, I'll second.
We have a first and a second. I'm going to vote via roll call, please.
Deb Hutton, yes. Deborah Myers.
Sarah Bowerly Jansen, yes.
And Cindy Canardi, yes.
Randy Cassidy, yep, yes.
Randy, did you vote?
Yeah, Randy Cassidy, yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, next item of business is report of officers and committees. Is there a director's report?
Yes, Madam President, just a couple of quick things. Just a reminder to the commission that our February 6th meeting, the plan is to have a public hearing on the home ARP allocation draft plan that we're putting together. It will be submitted to Housing and Urban Development Department by March 31st. So we're getting that consultation of that with the community wrapped up, and we'll have some thoughts on it for you then, and get an opportunity for the public to comment on February 6th. We've done a bit of a deep dive into our rehab guidelines, which you all made some changes to last fall. We're going a little deeper than that, and so we will have a few but we need to do all of them. So I'm going to more staff, one with the staff, but we need to sort of. So we'll have those. And then I think tonight you're going to be considering, or you are going to be considering neighborhood improvement grant guidelines. So we would like to get a commissioner to be on the neighborhood improvement grant council. And so I believe last year Commissioner Myerson did that, or Commissioner Hutton, I can't remember. Myerson, excuse me. So we would like to get one of you to volunteer for that tonight. I don't know if you want to do that as part of that agenda item or another place, but that concludes my report. I was going to say happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Happy birthday.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's my big birthday. All right, thank you. Is there a legal report?
Just two quick things. I just want to note that the Redevelopment Commission met in executive session pursuant to Indiana Code 514 1.5 6.1 just before this meeting to. And the other thing is just to note a little bit of public business, which is to say that the council will be taking up whether to approve the RDC's purchase of the CFC Showers building this Wednesday night.
All right, thank you. Is there a treasurer's report?
No report. Happy to answer questions.
All right, thank you. Are there business development updates?
Just a couple of things. There's one item on the agenda. We'll defer to the agenda for that. But we are continuing the work on the Trades District Technology Center through the final design to release to bid, which was an important step to be able to really understand what the ultimate pricing would look like for that project, and then start to make decisions about it. And we're also working on a lease agreement for the commercial space at the Trades District project.
Thank you. Next item is new business, resolution 23-05, approval of partnership agreement with Dimension Mill Inc. Who'd like to speak in regards to this?
I can do that. I'll also, Beth is here, Beth Kate, who will keep me honest. Pat East is here with the mill. So let me start into this and then certainly open up the floor to others if they want to join in. I'd like to just quickly summarize the deal, give you a little bit of background of how we got to this place, why we think this is an appropriate and good time to do this, what the funding sources are, and also put this a little bit in context of the mayor's recent announcement of the 501c3, so they can understand how everything's working together here. So let me start by saying, we've been talking about how to handle the Trades District for several years now. As you know, the pandemic kind of knocked the lights out, but we realized that it would be coming back up again, and so we needed to find a better way to do it, especially because there's a good moment in time, and I'll talk about that a little bit. What we have in front of you here is an agreement that is between the Park Redevelopment Commission and the mill. And the basic purpose of the agreement is so that the mill can step in and can essentially take over on the Trades District and helping to activate the Trades District post-pandemic, on managing the technology center, the Trades District Technology Center, and then also more generally to help to really drive the sector in Bloomington. They're really well positioned to do that. If you recall, before we opened the mill, we had an agreement with the RDC, an agreement with Pat East, long before the building ever opened. And that created really good momentum into the opening of the building. And so the timing of this is sort of echoing that. And that was a very successful move that we made at the time, because when the mill finally opened, which was in October 2018, it opened kind of roaring, ready to go. That was not the starting point of active year-end mill. So what we have here is a three-year agreement, as you may have seen in the packet. So it's through December 2025 with a 2-year funding commitment. So $200,000 per year for the first 2 years of the agreement, payable quarterly. So that's how it's written in the agreement. As I said, there are sort of 3 key activities to it. The first is really some very significant amount of work to take the Trades District Technology Center from where it is right now all the way through opening and into the operating phase of that building. That's a heavy lift. Development of the Trades District, and then cultivation of the innovation ecosystem. There are reporting requirements in the agreement. So annually on July 1st, there's a required report, and then there's a final report at the end of 2025. The agreement it is contemplated to be replaced by a Trades District management agreement at some point just before the building opens. So this is going to be sort of for the period until that happens, and then ultimately we'll be replaced for that. And then really the rest of it is mostly boilerplate language. So that's the agreement. The accomplishments and the background into which this fits, I think, are worth remembering. So when the Mayor Hamilton's administration came in 2016, the Trades District was sort of gone through some gyrations, but it was pretty dormant at that point. And the mayor basically said, "Look, we got to get this thing going, right?" So starting in 2017, we really leaned into it, and the first thing that we did was to open the mill, which was in October of 2018. So the end of October 2018. And that was really the first major milestone in the Trades District. The next thing that we did was to complete the infrastructure projects, so all the roads, all the infrastructure that you see out there, and that was done in May of 2019. The Trades District Garage opened in April of 2021. The city and the BEDC combined to secure an EDA grant, an Economic Development Administration grant for $3.5 million in September of 2021. And then the kiln was ultimately finally sold in November of 2022. And the admin building was sold in December of 2022. So there's been this kind of like stacking of activity and momentum, which, as I said before, had the wind kind of knocked out from it during the pandemic. But we feel like it's a really good moment because some of that momentum, I think, is starting to come back around, especially, we're starting to see some positive signs in the office market. There are basically three things that we think make this really timely. One is, like, as I mentioned, the Trades District Technology Center. That is a project that's about to really become real and serious, and we need some very significant hands-on expertise to make that successful. So that's the first thing. The second is that we understand that IU's leadership change is hopefully creating a little bit more opportunity for us as a city to leverage some of the IP and some of the other, commercialization activity coming out of the university. So having the mill, who's already been successfully interacting with IU, really be able to leverage that transition and turn it into something important for Bloomington is important. And then, as I said, the pandemic office market, I think, is starting to come around now. We're starting to hear that from our real estate friends, so that's a good moment in time as well. Funding sources. So you should know that there's something called the Certified Tech Park Fund, the CTP fund. The way that works is we get a disbursement every year of about $100,000 from the state. In order to continue to get that disbursement, we have to recertify the Certified Tech Park every once in a while, and we did that. We did that in 2021. We had recertification last year. And that recertification carries us through 2024. So next year, someone will have to do it again. That funding will be, we have the funding in hand for the 2022 portion of, 2023 portion of this account of this agreement, and we will be getting the monies to cover 2020. So from a funding perspective, not a lot of concern. If there's any issue on that funding coming in from the state, we have alternative funding sources, but we expect that to cover this. And then the 501c3, I think that's the last. So you may have seen that the administration announced a 501c3. It's kind of in the early moments of formation. And frankly, there's a lot of still thinking to be put against it. But that was something that was contemplated a year plus ago. And well before this agreement. So what everybody should understand is that, in our opinion, this agreement really sort of lessens, if not outright, eliminates the need for the 501c3 to become involved in the mill or the trades district. At some future time it could, but right now it's just not an urgent need. So we don't see that as an important factor here. The 501c3 was really designed to help city staff increase its expertise and its resource availability to handle new projects as they come up. So we think that primarily to look at Hopewell and look at some of the new potential art facility work that the feasibility plan called for. So, in case there was any question how that would interact here, we think for the time being it probably doesn't, and probably won't need to, but if that changes in the future, we certainly could do that door. So that is the overview, and I don't know, Beth, if you want to add anything from our perspective. And Pat East from the mill, I don't know if you want to add anything from the mill's perspective on this?
Yeah, just a couple of things. The executive director of the mill. Maybe a couple things to say to you tonight, a couple things that I would want. Other side of the table is one, how is this an extension of what the mill does already, right? Like, what's our connection to it other than being geographically close to the tech center? And then also, are we confident enough to do this? Like, what's our expertise to actually do this again? So the first is the Mill's mission and vision is right in line with kind of developing the trades district overall. So the mission of the Mill is to launch and accelerate startups, and the vision of the Mill is to become the center of entrepreneurship for the state of Indiana. The tech center is really kind of the next domino in that progression. I think we've done a really effective and efficient job over the last 4 years of building up the startup ecosystem in Bloomington. More investment dollars have come into our startups in the last 4 years, and the entire decade prior to that, just as one example. And so there's a lot of activity happening from the Mill in this area now because of the work we're doing, and the tech center is just an extension of that. How do we continue making solid, smart investments in our community? And the tech center is one of those things, because in large part due to the work that Jen and the BDC did with the city, we have a $3.5 million grant that's going to defray some of the costs for. So that's the first piece, is how is this an extension of what the Mill's already doing? Second piece is, why are we the people to do it? So one is, we have a staff of about a dozen. When we first started the Mill, it was really me and one other person. And now we have a really dedicated, very, very hard working staff. We've got about a dozen or so people now. We've identified a potential candidate to actually lead these efforts. This person has a background in real estate and startups and investment and economic development. Their employment is contingent upon this agreement being voted on positively tonight. But I think once you find out the candidate, once we officially hire that person, you'd be very happy with them. And then the other thing, the other reason we're confident in this is because building things is literally what we do. So we build startups all day long. My previous company, we went from 0 to 75 employees, 0 to 10 million in about 16 or so years. Sold that company right before the pandemic hit, and now we're I want to do that again with the tech center. We think that's just a good, smart move, investment on Bloomington behalf of the community. So those are the two things that I would want to know if I were on your side of the table. I'm happy to answer any additional questions as well.
And then because EDC is a party to the Trades District Technology Center, I don't know if you want to chime in.
Working with the city on a number of years now to try to advance the trades district, especially with CPP certification, opportunity zone certification. Living Blind is working on the Mill with the city to get that launched, and then with the grant. And the Mill is just really uniquely positioned and very well qualified for this, and so we're very excited about this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
Just wanted some clarification for the CDP funds. What are those dedicated for? What are the? How does it fit in this?
They need to be invested in the certified tech part, right, to advance that. They're a lot, I should say, looser to use than TIP, for example, which is very specifically contained. And we have used them in the past for something like this. In other words, the CTP fund was used to fund the reopening of the Mill. So this aligns with that use. I don't bet.
So basically, position, disposal, construction, rehab, maintenance, repair, and operation of public facilities. And so we look at what public facilities fall within that. a business incubator, expansion of business incubator, qualifies as a tech center, all of that is for CTE funds, not just the construction, which it funds. So CTE, but also labs and offices for life science and tech companies, so to the extent that there's development of further space. As long as it's part of this effort, and CTE does get used for that. As well, land and other assets and the owner and management of those, the operation of those. If they basically support business activities, technology. So that's what CTE is for. So to the extent that we talked about this, to the extent that there's any question about whether any of the funds involved in this agreement can be fully covered by CTE, right? That's where we're at. Or is it purchase that we would join cover the cost for tech center, business incubator development. So CTE funds and that's
So Jeff, sorry. When you, with the new nonprofit and this, everything about this makes sense to me. Then the new nonprofit sits over here and saying, don't think that the trade center, trades district, nonprofit status and governance will taken over by, controlled by the new nonprofit. But if there's a new mayor in here, or there's the board of this new nonprofit, who's to say what guarantee that there is this trades district being grabbed over to, or appropriately or inappropriately?
Well,
Seems sort
so
of nebulous boundary
yeah.
between the two.
I think, knowing what I know about Hopewell,
Mhm.
right, and which is a huge project, we're all working on it.
Yeah.
That is going to be all consuming. And so I think the 501c3, the nonprofit, would will recognize that when it ain't broken, don't fix it, right? And so that not only applies here, but it also applies to the Busker, right, which is a city facility, but it's being well managed by the Busker Chumley Theater Management.
Right.
To the Waldron, it's a city facility now, and it's being well managed by Constellation.
Right.
There's so much work to be done at Hopewell, both on pure development, but also that art feasibility, that it would be unlikely if they would come in and mess with something that's fine, right? And I think in this case, it's gonna be more than fine. It's gonna be a great way to manage the development process and the mill. So I cannot imagine that would be able to.
It still seems nebulous to say it's unlikely that. I just hear it as, I would hope it stays separate, but it just seems indefinite.
Well, and I think, Beth, correct me if I'm wrong here, but in the end, it's really up to the RDC, right? Because in the end, it's the RDC's land, it's the RDC's physical asset in the mill, and it's the RDC's agreement with the mill, right? And so, the idea that this other nonprofit could come in and somehow disrupt that without the the RDC's is not,
Okay,
it's not possible.
thank you.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear that.
without any thought, so.
Great, thanks.
Other questions from commissioners?
So essentially ladies first.
No, go ahead and you have already.
Essentially what we're looking at is we're looking at a $600,000 3-year commitment for the funding of personnel to oversee this. And with that, we've got a $3.5 million USD Commerce grant to start funding the building that we're going to be working towards with this $600,000 for the allocation. But do we have, do we have all the money allocated to build the facility? I guess is my first question. I know we have to develop the ecosystem, but do we also have the funding sources to actually do the building?
Yeah, that's a great question, Randy. At one point of clarification, it's the funding is for 2 years of the 3 years of the agreement, so it's 400,000. Not 6, but it is a 3-year agreement, so you're right about that. The answer on the building is we don't know yet what the gap is, and we will be coming back to the RDC. We did a schematic design. We priced that out. That demonstrated that there was a gap in the construction cost between what we originally committed and the EDA, the combination of that. So we knew that, not surprisingly, some of the inflationary pressures on construction costs that affected this project. We have gotten a very preliminary sense of what design development, which is the next level of development, or I should say design, might yield from a cost perspective, but it's not to our satisfaction enough to bring it to you yet to show you what that yielded. But really the money, or the rubber hits the road of bids. That's the truth. Everything else is kind of speculation. So we are still moving forward to get a very clear answer on that, but we did an interim assessment through design development, Randy, so that we could maybe try to predict what that might look like using someone who, if you remember, the RDC approved a contract to use a firm to do that. And we're waiting to get some hard numbers out of that process so we can share them with you and you can get a better sense of what that is.
Okay, so this agreement in itself provides the overall administration to also help through that particular process.
Say that again.
The agreement we're looking at with the mill, so they oversee this particular development of the tech park as a whole, also would include seeing the fruition of that building being built and completed, and then brought in for the IT ecosystem that we're trying to develop.
Yeah, that's right. So think about it. If you think about it from like a small circle to a larger circle to a larger circle, the small circle, which is by no means small, is the Trades District Technology Center. That's kind of the core responsibility, especially coming out of the gate. The broader circle around that is the Trades District, overall development, activating and development of the Trades District. And then the even larger circle around that is the innovation ecosystem in town. And so while the focal point will be the Trades District Technology Center, there's a lot of other stuff around that they'll be working on.
Okay. Appreciate it.
I mentioned as well, one of the things in this agreement is sources that can close the funding gaps and assisting.
What other questions from commissioners? I have a couple of questions or clarifications, perhaps. I noticed in here there's a 6-month notice period that can be given to terminate the contract. What would be, your thoughts around why a notice would be given to terminate the contract? What are some examples?
Well, first of all, it's a mutual,
Yes.
right? So I think from an RDC perspective, it could be underperformance. It could be, speculating, but probably one example might be underperformance of the contract by the mill. Mill's perspective, potentially it could be a inability to advance, its role in the contract because it's something that we would be doing, right? And so I think, even though this is to some degree shifting a fair amount of work over to the mill, the reality is we have to be very well connected all the way through the RDC, city staff, the mill, BDC, everybody's going to kind of have to be working through this. So, hopefully it's not we always have a provision like that if you need it, but hopefully you don't need it.
Then my other question is, talk about annual reporting. What kind of reports would be required necessarily? What's an example of what that would look like?
Well, so, if you think about the activity surrounding, let's start with the Trades District Technology Center, right? You all would want, as the owners of the building, would want to know, well, what's the tenant rate, what are people paying? I mean, just sort of basic like landlord kind of things that would be important to establish the viability of the building, because one of the requirements of the EDA is that the building be stabilized and self-funding over, I think it's in year 4 or 5. So anyway, that would be that example. In the case of the trades district, the responsibility set around the trades district, it might be a report about engagement with potential developers. It could be something as mechanical as like, what's the percentage of square footage against a goal that has been met, right? And so, that kind of thing, which I've been doing a little bit as a hobby to some degree, because there's so many other things going on in the city. But it's that formalization of that process and turning it into something that's a little bit more predictable here.
Thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? Are there any comments from the public? Not hearing any, I'll entertain a motion.
Deb Hutton, I'll move to approve resolution 2305 as written.
Sarah Bauer Danson, I second.
We have a first and a second. I need a vote via roll call, please.
Deb Hutton, yes.
Myers, yes.
Sarah Bauer Danson, yes.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
And Cindy Tenardi abstains. All right, next item of business is resolution 23-06, approval of neighborhood improvement grant guidelines. Who'd like to speak regarding this?
Visual Van Lawyer, Neighborhood Services Program Manager, for the annual speak to this.
Thank you very much for having me here today. You all have a copy of the updated 2023 proposed guidelines in the packet. There are some highlighted areas on that that are specific clauses and things that have been added to previous versions of these guidelines. The thing that I'd like to point you to, and the most important substantive change that we're proposing is that to expand the types of projects that would be eligible for an improvement grant. So just to give you some basis of where we're starting from. So this is taken from previous grant guidelines in terms of projects that are applicable. The project should spaces in a neighborhood through capital expenditure and may take the form of physical improvement projects with public benefit. These requirements tend to favor neighborhoods with public spaces, such as medians and things of that nature. And as a result, over the years, grant funding has been skewed in favor of some neighborhoods over others. And so just to give you a sense of what that looks like, in the last 25 years, so we've been on this grant for 25 years since 1998, the total amount of funding that has been is nearly $1 million, and 4 neighborhoods account for 50% of that funding. So it's really, skewed towards a handful of them. And of the 63 recognized neighborhoods, 36 have ever received funding during the history of the entire program. So what I'm proposing is to expand the types of projects eligible for physical improvements to include community building initiatives, such as leadership, training, and organizational capacity building projects and events. I believe that these proposed changes will broaden the scope of the program and we'll be able to do things like bringing the program closer to equity for neighborhoods across the city, allow for proposals from non-traditional neighborhood groups, such as a group of people who live in an apartment complex. Before they would have been eligible because they have no public space that would be eligible. And also, I'm hoping that this will encourage neighborhood groups to work together towards a common goal as opposed to always competing against one another for limited resources. Also, this change, I believe, supports the ultimate goals of our program, which are to strengthen neighborhoods, quality of life, providing opportunities for neighborhoods to build connections, foster community pride and inspire a broad sense of belonging, and also to actively engage residents of varying ages, ethnicities, races, income levels, as well as a mix of homeowners and renters. Finally, the last piece of the resolution is to formally incorporate the new city policy on art in the public right of way. Since neighborhood improvement grants do fund public art, that is something that is going forward, is incorporated into the program. And I'm happy to take any questions. Commissioners, thank you very much.
You just mentioned a few paragraphs ago that you're encouraging even two different neighborhoods or multiple neighborhoods to work together on grant. Can you get from all your experience with all the different grants that have been either proposed and or subsidized? Can you give any examples of how two or more neighborhoods would work together? Integrate?
I think, yeah, like, for instance, leadership training. We want to bring in new, younger people into leadership positions within neighborhood groups. If a workshop or some kind of leadership program, yeah, certainly multiple neighborhoods would benefit from that. There's no reason one particular neighborhood would just be doing leadership training. We certainly could have a broad swath of neighborhoods involved, for sure.
So in that case, you and Hand and the city would not be proposing a workshop, but 5, 6, 8, whatever neighborhoods would get together and say, we are proposing this workshop.
Correct. We'd be finding it's grassroots ideas. It's neighborhood driven. Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I think this looks terrific, and we're really excited to see the broadening of the program and the opportunity to serve more neighborhoods in a variety of capacities. I'm curious, I love the statement under neighborhood participation, that since participants will actively include people of varying ages and really brings in and abilities too, when you add that in there, as well as a mix of homeowners and renters. Your role as staff for this program, probably what will Hand do differently to help realize the potential of that state? Because it may not inherently exist that's going to be said in the program.
Right.
So I'm just curious kind of how this program will shift and accommodate that.
Right. I believe that is part of the way you'll see that the way this is structured, certain categories that each need to be fulfilled, and then underneath that it gives what would be included in a really strong, excellent proposal, and then one is like, oh, okay, and then one is like, maybe no money for you. And so those kinds of statements are really in the ones that are stellar. And so because they are neighborhood grants, not every neighborhood is even necessarily going to have that kind of demographic living in the neighborhood to be able to draw on. So yes, there are complications with that as a broad statement. But I really think that brought it beyond the traditional physical improvements gives us much more opportunity to do that, because we can bring in people from other places. And I really like the idea of being able to bring in renters, because many of our neighborhoods do have large apartment complexes right next door, or whether they're in part of the boundaries of the formal neighborhood association or not, they're there, and you know, we've got those folks everywhere. And you really get a difference in age and demographic once you bring in renters. So we'll see how it goes. You know, we're starting with this push, and we'll see how we get there and how we can tweak things.
So I do have that as an actual request I'm going to put in there in terms of in this statement. I'd like to propose that adding abilities to the list. Actively include
Yes.
people of abilities.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, any other questions from commissioners?
Who's never have to propose that position?
Yeah.
That's a lot of.
Okay, so
Well, let's get to the question. Okay. Any other questions? Any comment from the public?
Nope.
All right, not hearing any, I'll entertain a motion for resolution 23-06.
make the motion, do I make the motion with an amendment now, or is that second? Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution -23-06, updated neighborhood improvement grant guidelines approval with an amendment to add the word abilities under the second bullet under number 2, neighborhood participation. So that the statement will say participants will actively include people of varying ages, ethnicities, races, incomes, and abilities, as well as a
Deb Hutton, second. All right, we have a first and a second. All those in favor, vote via roll call, please.
Deb Hutton, yes.
Deborah Anderson.
Sarah Howard Davidson, yes.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
Yes, resolution passes. Next item of business is resolution 23-07, approval of contract with Force and Fire and Security to drain water from 714 South Rogers Street. Who'd like to speak in regards to this?
I'm happy to start, and maybe John can keep me honest here, just in terms of my presentation of it. So this is just a contract with Force and Fire and Security to do a couple of things. Predominantly, the first is to drain the water lines, the water out of the lines at 714 South Rogers in the Hopewell neighborhood. That's kind of Bruce building that used to be the rehab center there. Part of that's renovation for the winter. We actually, this is kind of a retroactive thing. We saw the extreme cold coming in December. We asked them to go out and do that. So that cost total to do that, and then also to make sure that there was a fire suppression system that could function there, even with water drained out of the lines, totaled $5,863. I will say that I believe that there was a little bit that we'll probably end up having to address, and we'll come back to you potentially for. I don't think we know the full scale of it yet. And John, this is where you could probably fill in a little bit of detail, but we're evaluating that. Another contract come your way just to make sure that we're keeping that building functional, so that if we do want to reuse that, we have that ability to do so.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from commissioners?
I just have one. So the third whereas clause says that Force and Fire and Security was identified as the best provider of services. I know it's a rather small a small sum, but I'm just curious to know, are there other potential companies that could do this in the area, and how it was identified that this is the best provider of the service?
Yeah, so for us, we reached out to JD Bora, our facilities manager, to have him go to and go through the different people that there are other companies capable of providing this service. To list them off about who JD contacted. I don't have that in my head right now, but I'm happy to.
I just like it on the record that there were more than one service provider that we're making sure that we're choosing best providers that are at the quality.
All right, any other questions from commissioners? Any comment from the public? Not hearing any, I'll entertain a motion for resolution 23-07.
Randy Cassidy, I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Deb Hutton, second.
We have a first and a second. I need a vote via roll call, please.
Deb Hutton, yes. Deborah Anderson, yes.
Sarah Howard Davidson, yes.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
And Cindy Canardi, yes. Resolution passes. Next item is resolution 23-08, approval of contract for landscape maintenance in the Freight District. If you'd like to speak to this.
I don't. This time, Alex is my backstop here in case I make a statement. So we have, we try to keep the trade district ever since you all did the redevelopment of the infrastructure there. We try to keep that relatively nice looking and update keep the grass mowed, keep the plantings fresh. We now have the trade district garage, so adding that to the scope of services here. This is actually a little bit of a reduction in cost of what it's been in the past years. In past years, that contract has been $45,000 to maintain just the trades district, honestly. And so even with this, taking into account some of the services that they're providing, dollars, and that includes base services that approximate about 33. And there's room for weed control, watering, and irrigation system, which is just so weather dependent and goes up and down every year. So that's what that extra cushion to exceed $40,000. did for this one to identify Nature's Way as well, just to make sure that their costs were within reason. Are
Yeah.
functioning, yeah.
And we actually wanted to kind of do a multi-year agreement with them because, sort of going back every year. So this was a while back that we had done that search. It's a little complex out there because there is like irrigation. So really changing out vendors is a little bit more cumbersome year over year because of the complexity of what they do and the knowledge that they have to do that. So we're hoping to, so we think there's value in continuing with the current vendor. And we think that to the extent that we can do a multi-year moving forward, it'll be just a lot easier.
All right, thank you. Any questions, comments from commissioners? Any comment from the public? I'm not hearing any. I'll entertain a motion for resolution 23-08.
Randy Cassidy, I'll make a motion to approve as noted.
I have a first and a second. I need a vote via roll call, please.
Deb Hutton, yes. Deborah Mayer.
Sarah Bauer Danson, yes.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
Yes. Motion passes. Next item of business is resolution 23-09. Approval of additional funds for emergency home repair at 1423 West B Street. We'd like to speak to this.
I'll start with Barry Collins from our office will give some detail, but the commission raised the cap, for emergency home repairs last fall at $10,000. This first one away, asked for an additional $1,000 for some project changes. Larger approval to set that cap. So Barry, you want to outline what the change is?
Yeah, well, the change is that we had a contract with them to heating system, because the heating system is in operation. Between the time of getting the heating system repaired, is when we had a big cold snap. As a result of no heat in the house. So we can't walk away from the project, maybe somebody without warning, and they haven't. That proves, it's just taking that long. So that's the additional amount, because we had to put that out to bid PM. And when we got that bid back, we realized we got some money left over from the original contract. So we needed to add some onto it to bring it up to 11,000 to go ahead and get these properties fixed up. So we'd like to get that one passed and passed quick, because I'm sure these people love to have some more. But they're still living there and the next day.
All right, thank you. Any questions from commissioners?
You just get a note on minor typo on the second whereas where the full number of $10,000 is not actually written as such, it's missing a digit.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from commissioners? Any comment from the public? Not here. I'll entertain a motion for resolution 23-09.
Sarah Bauer Danson, I'll motion to approve resolution 23-09 with the typo corrected.
Deb Hutton, second.
I have a first and a second. I need a vote via roll call, please.
Deb Hutton, yes.
The minor signature.
Sarah Bauer Danson, yes.
Randy Cassidy, yes.
Cindy Canardi, yes. Next item of business is resolution 23-10, 23-10. Approval of additional funds for emergency home repair at 213 North Sheffield Drive.
I'll just do the same thing. You're asking for an increase of $2,238 and very changes on this one.
Yeah, the reason we're asking for that is because the cost is simply not over of what our program allows without chimney. And what it is they have a chimney problem. The chimney is starting to pull away from the house. And this thing is 24 feet tall and 8 feet wide. So we've got to take care of that. They have to, total is not going to go, it has to be taken care of. So that has to be brought up. There's a stairway leading off of that down to the yard. That does not meet code either, that has to be upgraded. And also there's a patio underneath the deck that is just someone's torn it up and it's just not usable, and the kids can't come out the basement doors because there's these holes in the patio and everything else. So, with all that work that we have to do to get that house, back in shape, and the code and standards, we just needed the extra $2,000 because we just sent them all over. And a lot of that has to do with adding in the 10%. So we added the 10% on top of that. So, a lot of it.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions from commissioners?
And 12,238 seems very specific. Is there any reason, since it hasn't been done yet, that you wouldn't ask for, say, 12,500? So you had some.
Well, we feel that 10% contingency plan that money that we put in there. Yeah, will cover it because the work product was very comprehensive.
Thanks.
I'm just gonna mention there's the safety programs.
All right, any other questions? Any comment from the public? Not hearing any, I will ask for a motion for resolution 22-10.
Randy Case.
Randy.
And then the roll for funds that were very that 213.
Second it, Randy?
Yeah, that'd be fine. So I'll set Randy Cassidy, I'll second it.
All right, we have a first and a second. Need a vote via roll call, please.
Deb Hutton, yeah.
Everyone there's me.
Meh, sound one way. Randy Cassidy, yes.
All right, Cindy Canardi, yes. Resolution 20-10 passes. Next item of business is any general business discussion. One item I'd like to bring up is a volunteer for the neighborhood improvement grant process. Do we have anyone on the commission who'd like to volunteer?
I'd be happy to do it again, but I don't want, if other commissioners have an interest, please say your piece.
Is everyone okay with Commissioner Myerson volunteering again?
I think, yep, nope, I think she'd do a great job and appreciate it.
Schedule, we'll just be out.
Okay,
February, so I don't know.
all right, so we can put you down pending review of the schedule.
Thank you.
All right, any other general business discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All right, first and second, all in favor? Aye. Good night, everyone.
Good night.